So today I'm going to give you a tool. It's in the form of an acronym that you can sort of conjure up in your mind and utilize for yourself anytime that you feel triggered and need something to help ground you at that particular moment in time. But before diving into that, I want to talk to you a little bit about the nervous system. You know, a lot of scapegoats that I talk to, most of them actually, they will always come to me and have this deeply seated belief that there's something inherently wrong with them. That because they are highly reactive, because they have a hard time keeping their cool, that maybe, they deserved, to be targeted, or that, that makes them, that the narcissistic parent in their life was right about them. And the thing is that, if you come from a narcissistic family system and you've been scapegoated, that high reactivity that many of us have, gone through is quite inevitable, Of course, not everybody becomes highly reactive, but many of us do. And the reason is not because we're the devils, that we're, evil, ungrateful, and all those things that the narcissistic parent would tell you. The reason why we're highly reactive is because of your nervous system. And this is not magic. This is not, this is just science. You grow up in an environment as your brain is developing, where your nervous system is constantly being triggered. And, when you have a narcissistic parent, it means that they antagonize and antagonize and antagonize. They will push and they will push and they will push until you get that reaction. And so, basically, you are in an environment as a child, your brain's developing, and very rarely do we have that middle ground of peace. I mean, even when you do find moments of peace, quite often the narcissistic parent will destroy those moments of peace, because they want those reactions out of you. It's those reactions, every time that you react, that's what gives them the green light to unleash hell on you and then claim victimhood. It's a really sick manipulation game. And so you grow up in this environment, and you're constantly being, antagonized by the fictional drama that the narcissistic parent creates, right? And so you're on high alert, you're constantly on high alert. Your sympathetic nervous system is on hyperarousal. Or what happens is that after the fights and after the drama and after the psychological, emotional, physical abuse, all that stuff, then what happens is that we go into shutdown. And then we dissociate, we go numb, we disconnect from our body, we disconnect from our feelings, And this is every single day. We become, fight or flight, antagonized, big fights, and then the fight's over, but it's not resolved. The fight is not really over, you're going, whether you retrieve in your room or you ran away to a friend's house or you whatever it is that you did, you still didn't find that safe space where you could rest and feel like, okay, now I'm safe. What happened instead was that you had to completely dissociate from the situation that you were in order to survive. And as we grow up into adulthood, those two states, the fight and flight and then the shutdown, they kind of became the norm. Because this was how we were conditioned. This is how our body adapted to the situation that we were in at home. And so, if you're consistently triggered, if you're consistently demonized, and then you watch the narcissist claim victimhood after they that damage, I mean, you grew up in this. It's very difficult to find that middle peaceful ground. And so for us scapegoats, we're most likely going to have a lot of triggers that we need to work through. And it's a learning process to bring ourselves to that middle safe point, where we can make rational decisions and also respond rather than react. So I often tell people, I mean, if you grew up in an environment where this is consistently happening to you, yeah, as an adult, your body is going to continue behaving as it was trained, because this is the trauma adaptation that your body, your body adapted to what was happening at home. And so that will continue in adulthood. And, those reactions, the fight or flight and the freeze and fawn responses, I mean, those reactions are actually designed to protect you and safeguard you, It's a survival mechanism, right? It's an intuitive survival mechanism. So those very same reactions that, helped you survive can also become, self-sabotaging mechanisms when you reach adulthood. The same reactions that saved you can also become self-sabotaging reactions. And so that's why, it's very, very important for us to do the work of reconnecting with our body. When scapegoats tell me that they think something's wrong with them and they hate themselves or for being so highly reactive, I would tell you, don't hate any part of yourself, because that response actually saved your life or actually helped you cope with a dysfunctional family when you were young, It helps you, or at least it helped you preserve a part of you, right? I mean, I was super highly reactive. I was growing up. And in a sense, I was able to keep my authenticity because I fought like hell. That I was not going to be her extension. I was going to be me. And I am very, very, I am not at all what she envisioned, that her child should be. I did not play well with that. And, I'm not going to hate that side of me, because that side helped me preserve who I am today. And that's the side of me that, helped me hold on to myself. So hating any part of you is not healthy, because there's a reason for everything. Of course, however, it's super important to take accountability for a behavior, of course. I'm not saying that it's okay to be triggered and just do whatever. That's not okay. But what I am saying is that it's so important that you have self-compassion towards yourself, and that you understand that, your triggers and your reactions, they come from your wounds, they come from a place of hurt. They don't come from a place of meanness or whatever. They come from a place of hurt. They come from a place of very deep hurt. And in order for you to, heal, progress in your healing, it's important to find out what those hurts are, even if they feel so uncomfortable and terrifying to face. So today's acronym that I'm going to teach you is called S.N.O.W. S.N.O.W. I figure I picked a good day to talk about this. And I invite you to use this acronym while you're triggered, when you're feeling triggered, to help you ground yourself, to minimize any damage that may happen around you, and towards yourself, So the first S, which stands for stop. This is pretty straightforward, but this is the hardest thing to do when you're triggered, because when you're triggered, we see red. Like, the entire world is no longer what it is. you view everything through the lens of those emotions and of that trigger. You're transported back in time. It's as if you're that child all over again in that house, and you're not able to, you're defenseless, right? So, and the thing about triggers is that, you know, when we react, we will often, whatever it is that made us react, we will latch on to that thing. And we will focus on that thing, and that's the thing that, causes us pain, without realizing that that thing is actually a reminder of a much deeper pain, So sure, that thing may be painful. Maybe that person was a jerk. Sure, maybe something did happen that was like made you uncomfortable. But it's that physical reaction. You can tell you're triggered, by really focusing on your body. It's not about focusing on what's happening outside, but if you really focus on your body, and then you feel like your heart beating, you feel the rage or the need to run, the need to hide, you feel this physical, it's almost like this electricity running through your body, right? That's a cue. And then as soon as you feel that, stop whatever you're doing. Just stop. Do not continue. Do not act out on that trigger, okay? Stop what you're doing and breathe, okay? The second thing that's important to you, and that's the N of S.N.O.W, it's name it. So what you're going to do next is name it out loud to yourself, because you want to trigger the logical part of your brain. You want that to wake up, and you want to become the observer of what's happening in your body. I mean, you are not the trigger itself. You're having the experience of a trigger, and you want to be able to, shift your perspective as much as you can. I mean, I know it's very difficult to do because triggers are so powerful, but stop what you're doing. Name what you're experiencing. So, all right, I'm experiencing a trigger. I feel rage. I feel rage right now. I gotta hide. I feel rejected. I feel abandoned. Like whatever it is, name it. Name what you're experiencing. And then the next step, that's the part where you can actually utilize the trigger to work on yourself. And that's the O, which stands for observe. Now, when I say observe, triggering can be thought of as like an elevator shaft, okay? So our very first reaction to the triggering event, that's that initial impulse, right? But under this reaction, there's a second floor. And then deeper under that, there's another floor with an even more vulnerable feeling, right? And beneath that, there's another floor with an even more vulnerable feeling. So the deeper you get, the more of a powerful and vulnerable feeling you will find deep down inside. And so when you're triggered, there's actually the surface reaction, right, is that initial, that initial powerful outburst of, I hate you, right? But then if you stop, if you name it, and then you start to observe what is actually going on within you, you're going to be able to go down that elevator shaft and see really what's going on. And so when you come to the basement, that's usually where you find that core shock wound, that place where that's so sensitive and so painful and so threatening and probably so difficult to admit to yourself that you're desperate to avoid feeling it. But that's the core wound that drives the whole trigger. So for example, if somebody you care about didn't respond to like a text message or something like that, let's just use that as an example, And maybe you're like super insecure in your relationships, abandonment fears, are very common, right, among us survivors. So somebody did not respond to a text message. And then you react. You feel that physical rush, like, oh my God, like your heart is pinching and, you feel sick to your stomach. and you feel triggered. So the first floor, that initial reaction could be like, how dare you ignore me, how dare you disrespect me, how dare you exclude me, you know are you leaving me, are you abandoning me, what's going on, right? And then if you go down to the second floor, you might discover something a bit deeper, like, am I not good enough? And then you travel down lower, into a lower level, and then you may find something along the lines of, well, if I'm not good enough, that means that I'm not worthy. And if you go down even further, you may think, if I'm not worthy, that means I'm not lovable. And if you go down to the basement, then you will find, I don't deserve to be loved, and nobody will ever love me, And then when you think about it, really, when else in your life have you felt this way? If you travel back in time and you think about your childhood and you think about the things that happened to you, nobody will ever love me. I mean, I just described to you something that this is actually a process that I went through, because the way that I was raised, my mother would do, among other punishments, the silent treatment was like her favorite thing. And even when I was a child, you had to like grovel at my knees for forgiveness. It was that thing, and she could not talk to me for a day or 2 days or 3 days. When I reached teenagehood, that could be like a month. But at that point, I was, her silent treatments gave me a bit of a relief, because that meant that I was going to be left alone and that I wasn't going to be antagonized. But even though, it felt like relief, it's still, you're a child and you need, safety. You need, a child needs a parent, right? So, I mean, the wound is there, and it's just getting deeper and deeper and deeper. So, then you come into a situation like, for example, somebody doesn't answer a text, that's a wound of, nobody. If you go down all the floors, it basically leads to, I am unworthy of love, right? And that will drive your reactions. So when you really think about it, before responding to that text and before jumping at, the person's throat, if you sit down and observe your feelings and really see where that comes from, and allow yourself the space to feel what you're supposed to feel, even though it's super painful, it's only when you allow yourself to feel those super uncomfortable feelings that they actually lose power over you. And then the last thing that you do as you're doing this process is the W, which is wait. Wait it out. It will pass. It will pass. I promise you it will pass. Triggers are like waves. They come and they go. And they come and they go, but they're not permanent. Once the trigger passes, and then let's say, if we continue with that example, I receive a text from that person, oh, sorry, I was stuck in traffic or work or whatever reason, right? And then you realize, okay, everything goes back to normal. But that trigger still lives within you. And the next time there's a reminder in that relationship, you're going to have that trigger again. And, if you have a relationship with a healthy person and you continuously have these reactions without understanding where they come from, well, that's not healthy for the relationship, right? I mean, it's not fair to the person, and it's painful for you. So it really becomes so important for us to, when we feel triggered, to really inquire within as to what is going on and where that comes from. So S is for stop. Stop what you're doing. Like you're triggered, but stop what you're doing. Do not act on the trigger. Do not do anything. Stop what you're doing. And you name it. You name what you're feeling. O, you observe your feelings, your emotions. You inquire within. Go down the elevator shaft. Allow yourself, sometimes it's just like sitting And then you'll feel this, it's almost like, you know how when if you bite your nails, and if you really like focus on that feeling that drives you to bite your nails, that nervousness, that may almost feel like electricity in your fingers, right? That like drives you, this nervousness, right? So that's what I'm talking about. It's really observe that electricity that's running through you. Observe it, watch it, make a safe space for your feelings. That's the other thing too, if you want to live a life of peace and if you want to experience joy, then, good emotions, those positive emotions and difficult emotions, well, they're all emotions. So you can't just like block one and focus on the other. That's not possible. It's like a yin yang. If you want to feel your emotions, you're going to feel all your emotions. So if you do want to, live a life of peace and experience joy, you got to get those difficult feelings out of the way too. And like I said, when you're triggered, it's an opportunity for you to do a dive and inquire within as to where they come from and what's going on. Because once you get to know them, then they will lose power over you. And their power over you will diminish. And you will be able to eventually, calm down faster. Because you're going to start to recognize that, okay, this is a trigger, So you sit down and you let it pass. Even though it feels like red, you know that you're triggered. And when you're triggered, the reality is not the same as it is when you're calm. It's just not. When you're triggered, we may feel, judged and trapped. We may feel, disrespected, and we may feel completely alone in the world, like nobody could ever love us. We feel like we're horrible. We feel, all sorts of things, when we're triggered, right? But that's the trigger. That's the wound that's speaking to you. That is not, representative of who you are as a person. So I hope this helped you today. And always remember to love and trust yourself and to have a lot of compassion for yourself. Your body's reactions, the way that your body is responding to situation, it's because your body is trying to protect you. So by learning to connect with yourself and by, attuning with your body, with your deep emotions, that's sort of your way of telling your body, all right, thank you, I got the message. Thank you very much. The message has been received, and I'm going to drive from here. I'm going to make the decision. Allow the feeling to pass, and then respond instead of react. So remember, I love myself, I trust myself, and I'll talk to you soon.